Good evening and welcome to the Bellingham City Council regular meeting. Today is Monday, January 24th, 2022. I'm going to call the meeting to order and begin with announcements and upcoming meetings. Bellingham City Council meets all requirements of the State of Washington Open Meetings Act. We have one announcement that on February 7th, 2022 at 7:00 p.m., there will be a public hearing for the consideration of staff-initiated changes to Bellingham Municipal Code Title 20 and 21, revising the docketing process for proposals seeking to amend the Bellingham Comprehensive Plan. So again, that will be February 7th, which will be our next regular council meeting. And now we will turn to roll call.
Hannah Stone.
Here.
Holly Huffman.
Here.
Daniel Hamill.
Here.
Skip Williams.
Here.
Lisa Anderson.
Here.
Michael Lillquist.
Here.
Christina Michelle Martins.
Here.
Thank you very much. So just confirming all council members are present this evening. For the first item on the agenda this evening, we have a special presentation. This is a staff presentation. I didn't know if you wanted me to turn this agenda bill over to someone else for announcement, or if you want me to announce it and then turn it over to staff.
Yeah,
You know?
that's
Okay.
fine. Go for it.
Okay. So we have Agenda Bill 23233, staff presentation recognizing Ali Taisi for his 9-year tenure on the Bellingham Planning Commission. Ali Taisi was appointed to the Bellingham Planning Commission in 2013, and his term ended in December of 2021. During his long tenure, Ali worked on many important and sometimes controversial projects, including the 2016 Bellingham Comprehensive Plan, updates to subdivision, ADU, that alone, short-term rental and shoreline management program ordinances. Ali was elected chairperson of the commission many times, a reflection of the respect he held amongst the group. His knowledge and experience with Bellingham's complicated system of land use regulations were a tremendous asset to the commission and city staff. Mayor Fleetwood, staff, and the city council wish to thank Ali for his years of service to the city and the residents of Bellingham. For this item, I'm going to turn to Greg Ockett.
Good evening, Council. Greg Ockett, Planning and Community Development Department. Thanks for carving out a few minutes for us this evening. I know it's been a long day. We do want to thank Ali for his service on the commission. The Planning Commission is a group of volunteers, unpaid volunteers who just want to be a part of the process that we go through in terms of the development of the city. He's one of the longest serving and I would argue most effective commissioners that I have ever been around in my 30+ years of doing this work in the city of Bellingham. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Ollie's a planner at heart. And so he gets the big picture. He understands what we're trying to do with respect to our comprehensive plan and the goals and policies. But just as important is his work as a planning consultant. He has firsthand experience with our plans and development regulations. And he knows how zoning and development regulations will work on the ground. This dual perspective is so important in crafting regs that address city goals and also can be implemented. No one benefits from the adoption of rules that won't result in the type of development that we want. So every plan or land use regulation that has come to council in the last 9 years has included Ali's involvement. And you listed some of the plans, Councilmember Stone, and there are many more. The list goes on. Secondly is his leadership. He, as you said, was elected chairman of the commission a number of times, 6 times, 7 times, I lost count. He was masterful in running meetings, sometimes contentious meetings, but he made sure that all members of the commission and members of the public were heard and that their comments were considered. His calm and patient demeanor was vital in overseeing respectful and productive planning commission meetings. I could go on and on about Ali. We really appreciate his service, and we just wanted to take a moment on behalf of staff to say thank you.
Mayor Fleetwood, did you?
Yeah, I'll happily join in. I join in everything that you read, Council President Stone, and what you just said, Greg. Is Ollie with us? I think he's,
We were hoping that he would be here this evening,
well,
but I don't see him on the call yet.
if he's not, he can watch a recording of this. Ollie has just been absolutely exceptional all these years. I don't know if anyone watching from home fully appreciates the amount of time that planning commissioners put in on this work. Our own council member Anderson is fully aware of how much a time commitment that is. But Ollie is just, he's had the demeanor, he's friendly, everyone likes him, capable, competent. He's just going to be missed enormously. Yes, without doubt, one of the most exceptional planning commissioners we've ever had the pleasure of having.
Ollie is
There he
with
is.
us. We found him in attendees and have promoted him, so.
Sorry.
We've
My
been
name's
saying nice
wrong.
things about you, Ollie, just in the event you haven't heard.
You missed all the nice things I said about you, Ollie.
No, I heard them all, Greg, and thank you. I have a shared office account, and so I'm Francine in all our Zoom meetings, and so I apologize for that. But thank you all very much. And I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mayor Fleetwood.
Oh, no, I'm done. I suspect others will have comment as well. Thanks for being here, Ollie.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. Yeah, just be careful, Ally. You know, one day you're on the planning commission and the next day you're sitting in a city council seat. It's a great training ground, actually. I spent 4 of those 9 years on the planning commission with Ally, and I really appreciated the insight, level-headedness. When you chaired very well. We had some pretty rocking sessions. I think one of the few times we had to like suspend and exit because it did get kind of rocking in those chambers. And other times nobody would show up. And so we saw both spectrums. I really appreciated the time going through the comprehensive plan because that's when I kind of dropped in, and it was quite a steep learning curve. And you were always available to give me some background and explain things. So I really appreciated your time there and the assistance you gave me to really, I would say, never master planning, but have a much deeper understanding of how it works and overall goals. So, and Mayor Fleetwood is correct. It can be a lot of time if you approach it with commitment. And so I know how much time that took away from your family and your kids to do the work. And so really appreciated that, because it's the volunteers in our community that really does make this city run well. So your expertise will be missed, but I'm sure the planning department probably will not lose your number.
Thank you, Lisa. Lisa sat right next to me. So we had lots and lots of conversations about stuff, whispered conversations during meetings.
Ollie, have you officially had your final meeting?
Yes. My final meeting was the second meeting in December. I expressed to Greg that it was hard to have a final meeting via Zoom, and I'm sure all of you can appreciate the difficulties that Zoom has presented to us for communication, and the lack of, personal tangent, like feeling that you had when, like, say, Lisa and I were sitting next to each other. So that was hard, and I really missed the opportunity to thank people like Greg and the other city staff who work like really, really hard for our community in these meetings and do that in person. But I had an opportunity to go thank Greg in person, and through Greg, thank everybody else who put so much effort in. So I'm done officially. And yeah, I can I just say one thing real quick? I don't want to belabor this because I feel a little bit embarrassed by being singled out here, but this is a shout out to anybody listening. It is a lot of work, but it's incredibly rewarding. to volunteer on a City of Bellingham Board or Commission. Staff, whichever staff group you're working with, is always super helpful, and they're very supportive. And so I would say that I would encourage anyone who's interested in serving on a board or commission to go out and do it, try it. And you'll feel a reward from, supporting your community's efforts to grow and plan. And one of the most rewarding things was to hear from so many community members over the years. I grew up in Bellingham, spent my entire life here, and you settle into a niche of people that you interact with, and the service on a board or commission exposes you to different voices that you don't normally absorb in your day-to-day life. And so it was very rewarding to hear from all these different people on all these different topics, and broadened my perspective about my own community. So that's a pitch for those of you out there who might be listening and interested in serving on a board or commission. It was incredibly rewarding. The last thing I want to say is that we did hear from a lot of the same folks over and over again, and that's not a knock on those folks. I commend people's willingness to come to meetings and participate, but this is just a pitch to council that, and I know you think about this, but as you proceed in crafting how you engage with the community on these tough issues, just please keep in mind how difficult it is for certain socioeconomic groups and demographic groups to access public comment and to participate. And I really would encourage you to continue, and I know that this is a topic that's been discussed before, but that would be my final statement, is to continue to find ways to broaden outreach and public engagement so that more members of our community feel comfortable participating in the public process. I think that's incredibly important, especially as our community grows in diversity. And we have people who maybe aren't comfortable participating. So I would just leave you with that and express my sincere appreciation and thanks for this. And I promise I won't be a regular, but because of my profession, I will likely be at the podium in front of you all one day. And so please forgive me for that. And that's the last thing I'll say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ali. And even though you mentioned that your last meeting was back in December, obviously your public service continues with those announcements and advocacy efforts. So it's greatly appreciated. And you also highlighted the difficulties with these remote settings and participating via Zoom, which also posed a challenge for this particular presentation. But I believe that there may be someone in your home willing to present you. Wonderful. Heather reached out and agreed to make arrangements to be there this evening to present you with that plaque. Just again, to extend our appreciation as a City of Bellingham for your service in those 9 years with the Planning Commission. So thank you, Ali.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Everybody have a great evening and stay safe and healthy.
You too. Thank you. And as promised, Heather didn't have to speak. So, so thank you very much for the time and recognition and putting that together. Next this evening, we will turn to the mayor's report. So I will turn it over to Mayor Fleetwood.
Good evening. Thank you. I'll just make a couple of announcements, but first, I do have some appointments that I will announce. Most are information only, but there are a couple for approval. I will be appointing Anna Sorich to the Mayor's Neighborhood Advisory Commission. That's information only. I'm going to be appointing to the Community Development Advisory Board Aaron Clausen to a final term. That's a reappointment. I'll be appointing Pierce Bach to his first term. I'll be appointing Victor Crossetti, Shannon Laws, and Karen Jones to their first partial terms. So that is information only. Also information only, I'll be reappointing Katie Plua Olvera to the Bellingham-Whatcom County Commission on Sexual and Domestic Violence. And these require approval. I think I will mention them all en masse, and you can move them if you choose in one vote. Reappointing Garth Amundsen to his first full term and appointing Katie Gray and Jody Bento to their first terms. And that requires approval.
And their
Move
terms are
approval.
to which, oh, sorry, to which positions?
The Bellingham Arts Commission.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much.
Move
Was that you?
Second.
Second. And sorry, I think Councilmember Hamel had it the first time, but okay, so Councilmember Anderson, motion, second by Councilmember Hamel. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor will say aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Seeing none, that passes 7-0.
Thank you. I'd also like to take a moment and welcome the Cascadia Daily News. I think many of you are aware that they went online today. So I'd just like to take a moment to welcome our area's newest independent, locally owned newspaper. Again, the Cascadia Daily News, which began online publication today. I think they went live at noon. I'd also like to congratulate their executive editor, Ron Judd, and his entire team on this significant undertaking. Obviously, forming a new newspaper is no small feat, and I know lots of work went into this and will continue to go into that operation. We welcome this new source of information along with the organization's stated commitment to journalistic ethics and integrity, reporting of factual, truthful information based in reality, and covering local and regional issues transparently and objectively. So we're happy to have them in our community. That's exciting news. Also, I think all of us are familiar with the challenges that we've heard from downtown business owners as it relates to concerns that they've had around a whole series of issues downtown. So late last year, we began assessing needs and developing additional strategies and services to support a safe, clean, and welcoming downtown. This work was in collaboration with the Downtown Bellingham Partnership and with participation and feedback from our downtown business community. So I'm pleased to share that beginning this week, I believe Wednesday is the day that it's going to begin, we will see the first of several actions resulting from this work. Contracted private security patrols are scheduled within the downtown core. Patrols will be 24 hours a day and 7 days a week, conducted by clearly identified, unarmed, and vaccinated security personnel contracted through Risk Solutions Unlimited. Security patrol staff are trained in de-escalation and customer service and will focus on building relationships with all downtown stakeholders. They will provide additional eyes on the street to deter crime, assist those in need, and support other downtown service providers, such as the Homeless Outreach Team, HOT, and the Downtown Clean Team. This is a temporary service that will be in place until a long envisioned Downtown Safety Ambassador program is operational later this spring. The temporary safety patrols, the new Downtown Safety Ambassador program, and other enhanced services are intended to address concerns about safety, cleanliness, and public perception in the downtown business district. This initiative is funded by Federal American Recovery Plan dollars intended to support districts and industries most impacted by the pandemic. This is a first step, and we will keep council and the community informed as this initiative continues. So that's it. Back to you, President Stone.
Thank you very much, Mayor Fleetwood. So beginning with committee report outs this evening, we have to go back a ways. We started this morning at 9 o'clock with Public Works and Natural Resources. And that committee is chaired by Councilmember Lillquist. So I will turn it over to him at this time for report outs.
Let me unmute first. We had 5 items this morning and a rather lengthy series of top discussions, lasted all morning long. The first of those was discussion of a bid award for the Mill Avenue Overlay Project. This asphalt overlay project includes installation of a new curb, gutter, and sidewalks together with stormwater system components, including catch basins and piping. The city received 10 bids, which were publicly opened on December 22nd, and Tiger Construction was a responsible bidder who submitted the lowest responsive bid of $1,173,445.98, including sales tax, which was just below the engineer's estimate of $1.38 million. Staff recommended that we award the contract to Tiger Construction. This was a rather unusual situation because it ended up actually in a contrary recommendation. Under the bidding laws for public purchases, the city council cannot modify a project or a bid once it's awarded. We can only reject all bids or accept the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. We discussed the project today, including the fact that the road surface conditions have deteriorated, and so repaving makes sense, and including the fact that in general, sidewalks are expected, requested, and preferred by residents of Bellingham and are part of our pedestrian master plan and part of the projects funded by Bellingham's Transportation Fund. However, in this particular case, we heard from residents in the area that the majority of them were actually opposed to the project, in particular to the sidewalks aspects of the project. Many wanted no sidewalks, or at most one rather than the two. There was some discussion of the engineering issues or possible cost savings, but in the end, I don't think those are really determinative. And this morning, the committee recommended unanimously that we reject all bids, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Lillquist and a second by Councilmember Huffman. Is there discussion? Councilmember Lillquist?
I mentioned one other thing. If this project is rejected, we can come back and visit it someday, but just given workloads and other considerations, it may be several years before it comes back. It's an all or none kind of situation. And most of the residents in the area, I think, now understand that fact. I'm not trying to say that there's unanimous opinion in the neighborhood, but just that hopefully that information did make it out into this particular part of the Sandwich neighborhood.
Councilmember Anderson?
Thank you. I was basically going to state what Councilmember Lillquist just shared. I'll just add that in talking with area residents over the weekend, they did do a survey and a petition. And as Councilmember Lillquist indicated, quite a few wanted either none or just one sidewalk. So that really was the issue. And when I talked to one of the organizers on Sunday, they were able to talk to, it was like either 16 or 18 of the residents that had participated in the petition. And they all understood that there would be a delay because this has to kind of get back into the hopper. Staff will have to do work and they have other things on their agenda for the next couple of years. And they all indicated they would prefer that and get it right according to their wishes. So that's all I have to share on it.
The other comment I guess I wanted to share is just highlighting that, right, this project was coming forward based on council policy and direction provided through the Transportation Improvement Program, right? The 6-year TIP being highlighted as a project, as well as through the transportation plans, right? Our pedestrian and bicycle master plans. And so following that policy, I realized that this decision to reject the bid does run contrary to the policy previously set by council. For me, I think playing into this decision is obviously the clear communication and desire of the community that lives in that area now, but also that this particular stretch of Mill Road is somewhat, I don't want to say isolated, but when we're thinking of it not as a direct connection, right, that's going to leave a huge gap nor proximity to school, where you're thinking about the broader public as far as school children needing to navigate that area to get back and forth to school. So although it's definitely contrary to policy as previously set, And recognizing the fact that this cannot go forward at this time, right? It can't be modified to provide only one sidewalk or none, that unfortunately the project either has to go forward as presented or can't go forward at all, as Councilmember Lillquist mentioned, and will be delayed several years. So I just wanted to highlight those issues as well. Are there other comments or considerations by council members? Okay. Seeing none, we have a motion before us made by Councilmember Lillquist and seconded by Councilmember Huffman. So if there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor will say aye.
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 Any opposed? Or abstentions? Okay. Seeing none, then that motion to reject all bids passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank city staff, engineering staff in particular, for bringing forward a quality project. That wasn't the problem. And I would like to apologize to our construction community and the winning bidder. Again, they did absolutely nothing wrong. It's unfortunate what happened. Next item was another in a series of lengthy discussions on the Post Point Resource Recovery Project. When we say resource recovery, it has to do with the wastewater going to the sewage treatment plant. This update went into the triple bottom line plus process. This was the rubric used to evaluate all the possible ways technologically, financially, socially, and environmentally that you can treat sewage waste, and to come up with the one that most fit with the adopted goals and values of our community. The selection was a digestion of Class A biosolids, and that decision was sort of approached as early as 2017 and has been discussed incrementally since then. Recently, there's been concerns and growing awareness, not just here in Bellingham, but across the country, that there are certain classes of persistent toxic chemicals that were used in manufacturing and household goods, in carpet, in clothing, in food packaging, and some other sources of toxins that survive the biodigestion process, such that the Class A biosolids, although they are totally legally permissible to be used as garden amendments or soil amendments or landscape recovering, that there's some concern that it may not be the best thing to do. And so we have been discussing a couple things. We've been arguing basically back and forth about what are the levels of toxins and what is the level of risk and how will that risk profile change. We've been running tests. Today, we kind of went through the logic in how it was chosen, kind of ran across the fact that if we don't do biodigestion with some form of land application, then what do we do? Because when we arrived at biodigestion, it had enormous environmental and financial benefits. And so, for example, a supposedly obvious solution of just burying these things in a landfill actually would double the carbon impact of sewage treatment plant, which is already one of the largest carbon impacts, greenhouse gas emitting activities the city's involved in. So it would have enormous negative environmental impacts to try to avoid potential environmental impacts of the toxins. This was for discussion only. The city council did not committee did not reach any conclusions, did not make any recommendations. And at this point, the project is still proceeding as originally scoped and as planned. I think that's probably all I need to say on that item. The next item was discussion of the pedestrian and bicycle master plans, updates for both of those, and in particular, the proposed community engagement and outreach process. The 2012 pedestrian master plan and the 2014 bicycle master plan will be updated this year and are proposed for adoption in 2023. They've both been very successful. Many of the projects have been completed. Now it's time to consider what next and what different or what more. The project includes review and update of the current plans and will involve extensive public engagement process. Staff presented the proposed community engagement and outreach strategy for discussion and for feedback from the council. The presentation was also given earlier to the Transportation Commission on January 11th. And the Transportation Commission will continue to play a significant role in the development of the plan by providing input, direction, feedback on a regular basis throughout this process. In addition, following direction from Mayor Fleetwood, the update will include a review of unopened or unimproved rights of way for potential use for trails or other types of bicycle and pedestrian connections. This afternoon in particular, Andrea Reiter, I can't remember the name of the staffer, Mr. Johnson, gave an excellent presentation on the various ways and communities that are going to be looked out to, in particular, reaching out to communities in a variety of ways, both potentially in person at schools, as well as online through Engage Bellingham, to try to hit the usual suspects, as well as other communities who may be usually underrepresented or not always included in decision-making processes. They sought feedback, we gave them some, and it was for information only. The next item was continued discussion of an ordinance regarding public parking. In particular, this item is an ordinance that would amend the Bellingham Municipal Code, chapters 2.44, 11.33, and 11.36, which are the parking regulations. And the next item is a resolution which affects the rates that are actually charged at parking meters. The city, under its rules, may implement paid parking within established parking management zones. The city currently has one parking management zone encompassing parts of downtown Bellingham. If adopted, the proposed ordinance would establish a second parking management zone encompassing portions of Fairhaven as well. This agenda item is brought forward with a companion agenda item, which I just mentioned, having to do with the resolution for rates. The proposed ordinance and resolution together implement existing city policies that are contained in many documents, including the Downtown Bellingham Plan, the Fairhaven Parking Task Force Final Report, the city's comprehensive plan, and the city's 2018 Climate Protection Action Plan. These policies taken together guide parking management strategies with a focus on convenience for users, managing high demand in high occupancy areas, and reinvesting any excess revenue into the metered parking areas for their benefit. If you'll excuse me, I have a report if I can find it. We made several amendments earlier today.
I have that report.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up now. So earlier in this process, we already made some changes, and those changes include establishing a wider eligibility for service providers who could buy parking passes rather than pay for metered parking. One of the concerns is, for example, healthcare providers coming to low-income housing projects in newly established or established parking districts. And in addition, a parking pass for low-income residents that is basically only 20% of the usual rate, making that parking pass affordable to qualified low-income residents in subsidized housing inside the parking areas. Those revisions were already included. In addition, we made 3 changes to the ordinance today. Bellingham Municipal Code 11.33.230 establishes a civil penalty, a fine, for parking meter and overtime infractions of $15. The original proposal ordinance increased that to $41. The committee voted to revise the proposed ordinance to increase the penalty to only $30 rather than $41. In section BMC 11.33.230, there's a $25 late fee imposed on persons who fail to respond to parking citation within 15 days. The committee voted to revise the proposed ordinance in that section to increase the response deadline to 30 days. So there'll still be the same late fee if you don't pay your fine, but now you have 30 days to take care of that. Final change recommended by the committee is in BMC 11.33.060 section A, which has a parking prohibition which follows state law, which basically says, quote, within any parking space served by a publicly available electric vehicle supply equipment, if the vehicle is not connected to the charging equipment, that's a violation. The committee voted to revise the new subsection to add the phrase, comma, unless otherwise authorized by state law. This language does not change the effect at all, but it kind of future-proofs it in case state law changes on this topic, and then this code would still be in compliance with it. This afternoon, the committee recommended approval of the parking ordinance in its entirety with those revisions that I just outlined, and I move approval of the ordinance as revised by the committee and as reported just now.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Lillquist and a second by Councilmember Anderson. Further discussion, Councilmember Hamel.
I'm going to go ahead and abstain from this vote and the subsequent vote on the next, pardon me, agenda item. I own a business in downtown Bellingham, and parking, it just wouldn't be fair for me to vote on this one.
Further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
So the motion passes 6-0 with one abstention being Councilmember Hamel.
I should mention that this action we just took now will authorize metered parking in Fairhaven, which has been anticipated for a long time. And right now, I think it's currently slated to be in place, if I'm not incorrect, May 1st. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, that is correct. That's what the resolution says, that the changes as adopted would go into effect on May 1st, 2022.
Okay, thank you. So the next item is a resolution amending city parking rates. So these are the parking rates that would apply to both of the parking districts, downtown and Fairhaven. If adopted, the proposed resolution would increase the rates for on-street and off-street parking in Bellingham. This agenda item was brought forward with along with the previous item we just had. The proposed resolution are intended to implement existing policies as explained in the previous item. These policies guide the parking management strategies with a focus on convenience for users, managing demand in high occupancy areas, and reinvesting any excess metered revenue in the parking areas. This afternoon, by the way, just to indicate what it indicates, the current proposal, the current resolution would increase the hourly metered rate from 75 cents to $1.50 an hour, and would implement in the beginning of 2023 progressive parking rates, basically where the first hour is one rate, first 2 hours, and the second 2 hours are a higher rate, and the next 2 hours after that are slightly higher rate. This sort of progressing parking rate structure, first of all, depends upon new technologies, which we're installing and plan to install over the next year. And what it does is it allows you to have a low initial rate for short-term visits, but also a very high rate to act as a way of discouraging people from monopolizing parking, and therefore encourage them to use parking garages and other means, which then would have competitive parking fees relative to the metered rates. This afternoon, the committee had a positive recommendation 2-0 with myself abstaining on the parking meter resolution. I'm going to go ahead and move approval of the resolution and then seek to amend.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Lillquist and a second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion? Councilmember Lillquist.
I'm still worried that this doubling in the parking rate will be a difficult adjustment in a time when the downtown community is just, getting back on its feet, and the Fairhaven community would be new. The parking rate was set at, I think, what would otherwise be a fair and reasonable market rate, especially if we've been increasing it, more regularly over the years, which we didn't do. And so this jump comes as a bit of a sticker shock. And I'm thinking to balance all needs, even knowing it doesn't recover as much money. I mean, we lose money on a lot of this sort of stuff. It's not a matter of making money. And right now, the parking fund is not solvent, having taken a heavy hit over the past 2 years. Even so, I would move that we amend the flat parking rate to $1 instead of $1.50.
I would second that.
So there's an amendment from Councilmember Lillquist that was seconded by Councilmember Anderson. Councilmember Huffman.
Thank you. I could really go either way with the $1 or $1.50. I think there are great arguments both ways. Somebody just recently today brought to my attention the fact that a WTA ride is $2. So getting downtown would be $2. If you were planning on staying downtown for 1 hour, it's cheaper to pay for an hour of parking than it is to pay for a WTA pass. So, and if we had been increasing our hourly parking rate over the years at the rate that we probably should have, we'd be at $1.50 right now. We've been at 75 cents for so long. The biggest consideration is right now it's really difficult in a lot of parts of downtown to find a parking spot, and that dissuades people from coming downtown to park if they want to frequent a business. If they think they can't find a spot, they might not try. And so it's been established that higher parking rates might help free up spots. This is a little bit of an experiment to see exactly what the psychology of downtown people who park there is going to look like. But with new parking meters, we'll also be able to gauge that a little bit better with more data to get real specific about when, where, how long people are parking. So I'm okay moving it to $1 for now. And I just think that we need to be reassessing that amount so that we're getting the desired effect over time more frequently.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. We did have a long discussion on this, and so we never really had an opportunity to finish it, which is why we moved the motion forward so we can finish the discussion. We didn't during the work session. But I kind of see this as being incremental. It will be an adjustment that we haven't had an increase of parking fees for a long time. We'll be introducing a graduated, like an increased rate after January 2023, where people pay, one fee for 2 hours and a different one for the third and the fourth and so on. So raising the cost now to $1, and then knowing next year it's going to raise again, this allows a little bit of time for adjustment, assessment. The hope is we will have more turnaround, but I'm also mindful that due to COVID, everybody's hurting still a little bit. So I want to make sure we're supporting our downtown businesses, but I also want to be mindful. We really do have a lot of employees downtown who have used the parking because it was affordable. And they're going to have to figure out their adjustment, where they're going to park, how are they going to get the, is there enough parking stalls in the parkade for them? Are they going to have to start figuring out how to use the bus to get to work, especially after hours? So I want to make sure that we roll this in mind with some of the limitations some of the community members might actually have or perhaps perceive that they have. So I see this as a short term, and then we will catch it up to the full fee that we intend in January.
Councilmember Lillquist.
I hope there's support for the motion, but if there is, we're going to immediately have to turn to a complication, which is that the parking garage hourly rates or monthly rates were set in part to be comparable or competitive with the increased rate of on-street parking. And if we don't adjust those pass rates either now in the resolution or come back and do that before they take effect, there will be a mismatch there. I think we can come back and fix that later, but if you do vote for this lower rate, please realize we probably will need to revisit that fact.
Councilmember Williams, I'd seen your hand, but are you? You're muted, sir.
When this was presented, there was a list of goals and criterias that this was meant to meet. And one of those goals was speaking to turnover of parking spaces for supporting businesses. And if we can prorate that $1.50 which is what we currently do now. If I wanted to go park for 30 minutes, I only pay for 30 minutes time. And so the way that I see part of this is that it may not have the effect of supporting businesses if people can still stay there all day and take advantage of the relatively lower price. So that was a point that I was trying to make this afternoon. And it seems like going up to $1.50 all at once, we are paying the price for lack of action from the year 2008. And I just can't see that that's a good way of doing business. So that's all that I need to say.
Further discussion from council members? I guess I would just add that to me, the purpose of the rate increase is twofold. One, to, again, cover the expense associated with parking, because as we know, parking isn't free. But it's also to support downtown merchants and those businesses. And so I'm struggling with whether the difference, right, between $1 and $1.50, is that going to make a difference between someone going downtown and going out to dinner or going shopping? I'd like to think that people who are going to go out and, right, patronize businesses and spend money, that difference isn't going to be significant enough to deter that, but may be significant enough to deter, right, someone who was going to park there all day and occupy that spot. I'll admit, I mean, my office is downtown, and routinely there are open spaces, especially if you're going into work early, right? And you can get a spot. And then if you occupy it all day, right, later when businesses are open, you don't have that turnover. And so my concern is, are we again, right, we're delaying this, maybe less this time, if we're saying that next year, potentially we will then raise it to $1.50. So if we're committing now to raising it to $1.50 in a year, I suppose I could support that in the short term, but I'm just not certain that we're going to see, by only moving it to $1 from 75 cents to $1. I just want us to recognize that I don't think we're achieving either of the two ends that we're trying to achieve by this resolution, and that we're not making up any of the, right, lack of funding and money coming in that's needed to support parking. But I also don't know that it's going to be significant enough to create that turnover that we're looking for downtown businesses. And so for that reason, I don't know that I would support the $1. Further discussion. Okay, seeing none, we have a motion before us. It's an amendment to the original motion. The amendment was brought forward by Councilmember Lillquist and seconded by Councilmember Anderson. And again, the motion is to adjust that rate from the proposed $1.50 in the resolution to $1 instead. There's no further discussion. I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Right?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions?
Abstain.
So I believe that passed 4-2 with 1 abstention. And now we have a motion before us to pass the resolution then as amended. So with the amendment being changing the resolution from $1.50 to $1. And again, that motion is brought by Councilmember Lillquist and seconded by Councilmember Anderson. So all in favor will say aye.
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 Aye. Any noes? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, so that passes 6-0-1 with the abstention being Councilmember Hamel. Councilmember Lillquist.
I would like to move that we refer an item to the Public Works Committee to re-examine the newly adopted monthly parking rates to harmonize them with the newly adopted flat rate.
Councilmember Anderson.
Can I ask for clarification? Councilmember Lillquist, are you speaking about for this year? Since the reduction down to $1, or are you thinking this year and then next year when we would assume the more expanded rates?
I'm just talking about making sure to look at those monthly rates that would take effect, I believe, in May. Is that correct? Mr. Johnson, maybe you could help me out here.
Yes, as written, and as I understand the motion that was just passed, is the resolution was passed, which makes it effective May 1st of 2022. And then in section A, where it says that the flat rates are $1.50 an hour in 2022, that would go to $1 per hour. But the rates in the resolution for 2023 would stay as is unchanged. And I think what Mr. Lillquist is asking is, should we look at the off-street permit parking in section 3A and B? Because we want to make sure that the cost for parking off-street is lower than the cost for parking on-street. And so I believe what Mr. Lillquist is, we want to return to the Public Works Committee at some point before May 1st to verify that idea holds true, that we want to incentivize getting people to park off the street in our parking structures or our surface lots, because there is space available in those spaces, and free those on-street parking spaces available. So that's how I understood that to be, and would anticipate coming back to the Public Works Committee in April timeframe, I would suspect, maybe March.
I'll second.
So the motion's been made by Councilmember Lillquist and a second by Councilmember Anderson. And just for clarification, then that's a change that would be put in place for that 8 months or so.
Let's take a look at it and see if there is a need for a change first, so we can return back with a recommendation if there's a need to do that change. Either way, we'll come back to the committee with a report, but let's make sure that those are aligned up. We'd also need to check with our finance folks on timing and when permits are issued or not. And we'll be ready to have that conversation in probably March or maybe April timeframe.
Mayor Fleetwood.
Councilmember Lillquist, did Director Johnston characterize your intention?
Yes.
Good, thank you.
I was actually following Eric on that. He was the one who pointed out this issue to me, and I want to make sure we address it.
So the motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor will say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
So that passes 6-0 with one abstention being Councilmember Hamel.
And that is the end of the report from Public Works and Natural Resources Committee.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Lillquist. So the next committee we had today was Parks and Recreation, and that is chaired by Councilmember Williams. So I'll turn it over to him at this time.
Thank you, President Stone. We met this afternoon to discuss the topic of dogs in our parks. And in summary, on August 30th, 2021, the council directed our staff to evaluate the existing code restrictions on dogs in parks and suggested that the definition of under control be amended and include a specific maximum leash length. The staff was asked to evaluate this and bring a recommendation forward to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and then ultimately to the City Council. The Bellingham Citizen Dog Task Force has been meeting regularly since February 2020 to develop a strategy and timeline to address these ongoing issues with dogs in Bellingham parks. The work group was asked to evaluate the current language in the Bellingham Municipal Code regarding dogs and to make an appropriate recommendation. And this item came before us today asking for our direction on how to proceed on these recommendations. most of the recommendations dealt with Bellingham Municipal Code, Chapter 7.04.030 and Chapter 804.070. And most of the recommendations dealt with revising the definitions of items like who is the responsible person, changing the words to address dogs coming into contact with other dogs, and the definition of the animal being under control. After discussion, the committee directed this item back to the staff to present a draft ordinance for us to look at sometime in the near future. So that being said, we did not take any action other than that. And maybe my other two colleagues on the committee have something to add, which would be Council Member Anderson and Council Member Huffman. So in other words, we don't have anything to present today other than we have given staff direction to come back with a draft ordinance for us to consider.
Councilmember Williams, I see Councilmember Hutzman's hand. Oh, just went down.
Oh,
I can say a couple things. I was just gonna add, yeah, council had asked Parks specifically to look at leash length and because of community members concerned with very long leash lengths being a problem with dogs being under control, and through the process with Parks, it was found that leash length might not be the direction that they wanted to go into. That just really further defining what under control means was kind of the better option. And as a dog owner, I very much appreciate that. And I think that their direction is a good one. So I look forward to the draft ordinance.
one other thing that I forgot to add in the discussion, it was also presented that the Parks Department would focus more on educating the public on the need for animal control, using the park ambassadors for that role. And once that piece was in place, we would deal with the enforcement mechanism down the road because there's a lot of bumps in that road we need to iron out. That being said, we're just going to get a new ordinance to consider. And that is it as far as the Parks and Recreation Committee tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councilmember Williams. So the next committee meeting we had this afternoon was the Climate Action Committee, and that committee is chaired by Councilmember Martins. So I will turn it over to her at this time.
Thank you, President Stone. We had just one item in climate action, and that was more discussion and providing direction to staff. It was directed by Mayor Fleetwood that staff develop a property tax levy proposal for the Climate Action Fund for Council's consideration for the November 2022 ballot. There are 3 goals that staff was asked to keep in mind, one being mitigation of carbon pollution as quickly as is feasible to meet Bellingham's emission reduction targets. 2 was adaptation to changing climate. 2 was adaptation to changing climate, including extreme weather events. And 3 was serving our most vulnerable populations first when addressing mitigation and adaptation. Staff did a great job of bringing forward a couple comparable cities. I think it was a consensus of council that we need to do as much as possible, as quickly as possible. And staff seems to be on the same page as that. There was specific discussion that was kind of turned back to council. I had a question about readjusting to be on track with 2030 instead of what was gifted the 2050 mark of having to really have all of your ducks in a row. And staff had indicated that they are also aware that the quicker the better and the more useful and effective it will be. So that kind of comes back to us as council and as the city if we want to make any if we want to change anything about our own climate action policy, especially with the news and events that we are hearing over the past couple years of everything just escalating on the timetable. The next steps are in March. Staff is going to return to council with proposed uses for and the amount of the levy. I imagine there'll be a lot of discussion in between here and there. And in theory, by November, it will be on the ballot for the community to vote on in November of 2022. And that would, if it does pass in January of 2023, revenue collection would begin. And this is my first committee report out briefing, so I will look to everyone else who was there, who has anything to add. What did I miss?
Anything to add? Councilmember Williams.
You didn't miss anything.
Confirmation's always good too. Anything else for your committee, Councilmember Martins?
No, I feel like we had a nice, easy day compared to Councilmember Lilliquist.
Very good. So with end of the Climate Action Committee, we will move on. The next committee meeting this afternoon was the Public Health, Safety, and Justice Committee. That is chaired by Councilmember Hamel. So I will turn it over to him at this time.
Thank you, Council President Stone. I was joined this afternoon by Council members Williams and Huffman. We had one item for discussion. This was a discussion of 2022 priorities for the Public Health, Safety, and Justice Committee. And I'll just summarize by saying we kind of covered some ground here in terms of the items that we're going to want to be talking about for the rest of this year, including a basic primer on substance use disorder trends, children's initiative work, several funding updates on several funding sources, which are going to get moved over to a different committee. It's Community and Economic Development. That's Councilmember Huffman's committee. House Bill 1590, which is now referred to as Affordable Housing Funds, House Bill 1406 on the county side, and then Lighthouse Mission Ministries moved back to Old Town. There's also, we'll need to be talking about the Justice Project, of which Councilmember Lilliquist and I sit on that committee, and then also update on the ART, which kind of dovetailed nicely into the next topic for the committee of the whole, which was the update on the GRACE and LEAD programs. And with that, end of committee report.
Thank you, Councilmember Hamel. So the next committee meeting we had this afternoon was Committee of the Whole. All council members were present, and we had 3 items before us this afternoon. The first was Agenda Bill 23243. This was an update on GRACE and LEAD programs. So since 2018, the GRACE program has operated in Whatcom County, offering case management and other supportive services to individuals regularly utilizing our emergency and criminal justice systems. Since 2020, the LEAD program, initially started by the prosecutor's office, has provided services to individuals involved in the criminal justice system. These programs are funded by Whatcom County, the City of Bellingham, and Peace Health, as well as through state and federal grants. In addition to the operational services provided by CMAR, there is a systems work component in coordinating emergency response, hospital, community provider, and criminal justice partners to ensure efficient and effective service delivery. The Whatcom County Health Department has provided the hub in collaborating with the various spokes involved in these programs. And this afternoon, we heard from the Whatcom County Health Department Director, Erica Lautenbach, as well as Dean White, regarding an update. And so highlighting that the as mentioned in the summary, the GRACE program, which stands for Grant Ground Level Response and Coordinated Engagement, as well as the LEAD program, which stands for Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion, that those will now be housed under the Whatcom County Health Department. And the proposed start date is April 1st, 2022. This will be the creation of a new division within the Whatcom County Health Department called the Response Systems Division. Within that division, there will be 14 employees, 9 of which will be case managers, as well as 1 manager, 2 supervisors, 1 for each of the programs mentioned, 1 for LEAD and 1 for GRACE, as well as a nurse practitioner and other executive staff. But wanting to highlight as well and extend appreciation to what Erica Lautenbach called the dream team of 4 who have really worked tirelessly to bring this to fruition. And so wanting to highlight those 4 members as well and give name recognition again. So again, Dean White, this will be Gail DeHogue, Melora Christensen, and Vanessa Martin. And just extending appreciation for the hard work and vision to bring these services all under sort of one umbrella and a coordinated effort for the county, which includes the city of Bellingham, but in hopes that that will help when you're talking about such coordinated efforts, right? On a case-by-case basis, the number of partners that are involved in every contact and every success, it's really vital that there's sort of one guiding agency to be able to oversee that work. But again, the partnerships of ourselves as the city, as well as the county and the numerous partners throughout the community are going to be vital to the continued success. But we're hopeful that this will increase efficiency as well as just success as we see within those programs, and hopeful that funding will expand as well to meet the need. Is there anything else that council members would like to add to? It was a robust discussion and a lot of good information presented, and more to come as far as I'm imagining news releases and other updates as we near that April 1st projected start date for that new division at the Whatcom County Health Department. But anything else to add at this time? Councilmember Hamel?
Just briefly, I forgot to mention, I kind of give a laundry list of the programs that we have in the community and how that differentiates us from other communities that I've met with over the course of the last several years. One thing I forgot to mention, which is super important, is the Crisis Stabilization Center. That we have a home now for people with mental health illness and substance use disorder, 16 beds on either side. It's a big deal for the community. So I just wanted to get that back on the record.
Thank you, Councilmember Hamel. Yeah, a number of ongoing efforts that, as Councilmember Hamel highlighted, are unique to our community and just evidence of the commitment across the board to do this important work. So thank you as well, Councilmember Hamel, for your support and engagement in these efforts. So there's nothing further. This was for information only, but again, encouraging members of the public to go back and watch that session if you would like additional information. The second item before us this afternoon was Agenda Bill 23244. So this was a Bellingham Police Department staffing update. The Bellingham Police Department provided a staffing update. Recent changes to the staffing model in the department emphasize increasing response call times. Staff presented on the reorganization as well as the strategy and timeline toward a fully staffed department. And so this presentation was brought forward by our own interim police chief, Flo Simon, as well as Deputy Chief Don Ulmer. And some of the, I guess, harsh realities, which have come up a couple times in discussion with council, but it's just the current staffing crisis, I would say. So when they're looking at an allocation of 122 positions within the police department, minus the 9 command staff members, that leaves 113 positions with the police department. And currently they're down 34 active members. And so that includes 13 openings. So those are open positions that need to be filled, in addition to 21 officers who aren't currently in uniform or working either because they're at the academy in training, which is a roughly 7.5-month process before, so after a hire, before someone's actually on the street or doing work as an officer here locally, as well as medical leave or other absences that different employees are facing. And so that being down 34 has certainly increased what they were highlighting as the call response times, right? 911, but that the reallocation has really had to focus on primarily patrol and investigations. And so what that has done is really eliminated those special units for the foreseeable future while we work through those staffing lows. And so the projection right now was that it's expected to be until 2029 or 2032 before we realize sort of full staffing levels as we were accustomed to in the past. And so at this time, that non-peak times seeing, they're saying, 4 officers plus a supervisor, or during peak times, 8 officers and 2 supervisors on duty. And so understanding that 911 call times obviously are extended because the police department has to prioritize those calls. And so one of the things that was highlighted was really wanting to make sure that members of the community know who to call for what need or service, and perhaps needing to work as a broader, community and city entity to reorganize as well some of the calls that are coming into 911. So some of that falls into the policy directives and that have been brought by council for alternatives, right, for unarmed response, the behavioral health responses that we've been speaking to for months, and things related to, for instance, ART, the alternative response team. And so efforts of that sort, as well, looking at options for civilian roles. So perhaps unarmed officers who could respond, say, to helping collect report data from a bike theft or something that doesn't require, right, an officer with a badge or an armed officer to respond and actually handle that particular inquiry or call for assistance. And then in addition, just looking at how can educate the community collectively on, right, what entity or partner or department would be called for assistance on particular areas of concern. And so 911 focusing at this time, right, on calls that need fire, EMS, or police response at this time. And again, focusing on patrol and investigations, since that is the primary role of the police department. But I also wanted to highlight just the sentiment that was provided by Deputy Chief Ulmer, just in that willingness and desire, right, to work collaboratively and in partnership with the council as well as administration and the community in looking at, right, this as an opportunity to be creative in what are the responses that of need for assistance that could be handled by, again, other entities, whether those be partners or other departments, and really allowing the police officers who have certain areas of expertise to focus on those particular areas or calls to service, rather than trying to do everything, right, which is what sort of has happened to this time, because the default has been call 911. And so now looking at an opportunity for more creative options for how to really navigate this time as we look at public health and public safety during these times of staffing shortages. So I don't know if there are other council members who were present, if there's things you'd like to add. Councilmember Hamel.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak briefly to the ART, the alternate response team that's pending, that hopefully will be up and running in a matter of months. That team can handle about 4% of calls, which is, it comes out about 20 a day. And so it's really 2 teams. It's not just one. So it'd be two different teams of a medical provider and a behavioral health specialist. So I just want to get that out there to the public. This is not going to solve everything, though. I mean, I just want to be totally clear that, 4% of calls is not the majority, although we do hear quite a bit from law enforcement that they are responding to a substantial increase in behavioral health calls over the past 10 or 12 years. Still trying to track down what the change was. But they have been, asked to do that. And then complicating things was some of the legislation that came out of Olympia last year that it complicated things as it relates to responding to certain types of behavioral health calls. So I guess I say all that by way of saying that ART is important. Its implementation is important for this community. It's important for the people that can receive help. But there's a whole list of complications, including ITA, Involuntary Treatment Act, the definition of gravely disabled. And so there's just a lot of things that really need to get sorted out. Some of it are legislative, some of it is staffing locally here. So I just want to put that out there. And then we got an email, we all did, from some business owners downtown. And there was a reference to GRACE being a response program. It's not. It's look at it as an intervention program and a prevention program. And GRACE is ground level response and coordinated engagement. It's for high utilizers of systems that are calling 911 for chronic issues versus an acute issue. So it's really trying to address that piece of it. So I just wanted to, maybe add a little more clarity to that part of it.
I appreciate that, Councilmember Hamel. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. A couple of things I spoke to earlier, I just wanted to reiterate. One is I called upon staff and council that looking forward, we have to really try to find some creative solutions, not just on how we respond, but how do we restaff and staff for the future of our Bellingham Police Department. We are a little bit of an island up here, and as Deputy Chief Almer pointed out, that if I was say hypothetically, I was an officer down in Bellevue and I wanted to pursue another opportunity, there are plenty of municipalities in that area that are vying for officers, and I wouldn't have to uproot my family and move to another location. We are a high cost living area. Housing is expensive. So as we look to recruit new officers, we need to make sure that our community is also desirable for people to want to come here and work. So we're going to have to look at how do we begin to be competitive to recruit well-qualified individuals, whether it's a lateral transfer for someone who is already certified or perhaps new recruits. The other thing is because of the shortage, some of our officers now and in the foreseeable future and perhaps years, there will be forced overtime, and there will be times that they will be called in or perhaps have to work on a day off. And that's a huge sacrifice and a lot of stress on individuals, but it's also a sacrifice of family. And I want the officers and the families to realize that we do acknowledge that. And personally, I really appreciate the service that they're providing. And I'm committed to do what we can on our end to try to mitigate that and fix it to the most expedient possible way. And I also think, one of the things that was wonderful about Bellingham that I often spoke about my support is that we were a pretty good community policing model. We started that years ago before it really became a model people tried to create in their community. Our bike patrol, our community officers, there was a lot of communication and outreach, attending neighborhood meetings, and a lot of that right now is having to be put on hiatus. And so we are basically becoming more of a response model just because of the staffing. And so whatever we can do to help restaff is going to be important. And also getting some type of incentive, because what wasn't mentioned is the silver tsunami that we could be expecting. And a lot of times people are at the point they're ready to retire. It sounds like legislation might be looking at some early retirement packaging, which could have people exit sooner, which I don't know why they're doing that, but we may have to look at how can we incentivize people staying a year or two more beyond where their eligibility of retirement is, so that we can continue to offer the services that are needed in our community. So I want the community to know that we are taking this serious. We will look at every option we can to try to shore this up, because the support of the community is essential. But I also want the officers, you know, the men and women in blue and their family to know that we really appreciate the sacrifice that they're making to the community before the staff shortages and during. So I think it's important as city leaders that we start speaking up about our appreciation and respect for the work that they do, because they took a pretty hard hit in this local community over the last couple of years. And I think it's really important for us to say that as a community, that there is value in good, strong community policing. It's the model that we want. And so I hope we can work towards bringing that back to its full potential again sooner than what was shared today.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes, I was very, very appreciative of the picture that I got today. And one of the issues, obviously, that Council Member Anderson mentioned, and I'm sure others have too, is how do we get to be competitive with other areas to get the kind of police officers that we want. And I would really, really appreciate at some point getting an accurate picture of what are our roadblocks. I mean, I've heard a lot of different sources kind of speculate what they are, but I sure would like to get an accurate picture of what those roadblocks are, so that we can begin an effort to actively recruit the people that we need to get us back to where we were. And but I was very, very appreciative of the information presented, because that gave me a more accurate picture of where we are as opposed to where we were. So I just want to offer my appreciation to the department for giving us that information. And thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. Mayor Fleetwood.
Well, just in response to Councilmember Williams, we'd be happy to have that further discussion and answer those questions and go into a bit more detail about what we know as it relates to present roadblocks. I think that would be a good conversation, and it would be good just for general community knowledge and awareness. So it would be an elaboration of what was presented today by Deputy Chief Almer, but we can get you some more detail as it relates to that. Councilmember Anderson, I just want to say in the strongest terms that we are absolutely committed to doing everything in our power to ponder creative ways to staff back up. And we're going to be working as hard as we can as it relates to that. You made reference to the silver tsunami, but when Almer made reference this afternoon to 2029 and the staffing issues, it's not just staffing up from the place that we're at today. It is, in fact, the retirements that are coming. And I don't know if Chief Simon is free to give us a little bit of a picture of what we anticipate in the coming years as it relates to that. But it's significant number of planned retirements in the police department in the coming years, which is no one's fault. It's just the nature of when people started working for police. Can you comment on that, Flo?
I sure can, Mayor. Thank you for having me, and council members, thank you for indulging me for just a minute. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge Councilman Anderson for your support of the police department. I so appreciate it, and it's nice to hear that. When Bill Clinton was in office, he made a pact, he made a law, a rule that said that would hire many more officers. So in the next 3 years, we are set to have about 34 of those officers that can retire. And so I'm looking at ways to incentivize them staying a year, 2 years, because I don't want to lose that knowledge base. I don't want to lose that training base. I would rather put incentives into keeping what we have versus attracting new people. So I'm working on that, and there's more to come on that in the near future. But yeah, 34 in 3 years is a lot. And a lot of them are, when they turn 53, anticipating retiring.
Thank you, Chief Simon. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. Mayor Fleetwood, I didn't want to at all indicate that city administration and staff were not dedicated towards this. I just wanted to reiterate my support, but I also wanted to basically reassure the public that we know the gravity of it, and there is commitment to do everything we can to address it. And that includes, that's beyond just my commitment, that is including, I don't want to speak for staff, but just from past conversations, I have no doubt that the mayor's office and team and administration has that same shared commitment.
And just so you know, in response to that, I didn't take it that way at all. I was just wanting to express that we're on the same page as it relates to our commitment and intentions.
Thank you all very much. Any further pieces to add to this presentation? Okay, thank you again, Chief Simon, and pass along our appreciation to Deputy Chief Ulmer for spending time with us this afternoon. Thanks. So the next item, that was for information only, but as Mayor Fleetwood mentioned, this will be discussions to come as well. But for today, that was information only. And the last item before us during Committee of the Whole was Agenda Bill 23193. This was a work session to consider amendments to Bellingham Municipal Code, Chapter 17.10, and the Washington State Energy Code, Commercial, requiring electrification and efficiency standards for certain multifamily and commercial buildings. On December 13th, 2021, the City Council held a public hearing on proposed changes to Bellingham Municipal Code 17.10, building codes, modifying the recently adopted 2018 State Energy Code to require electrification of space and water heating, incremental improvements in energy efficiency, and solar installation or readiness measures in certain multifamily and commercial buildings. The work session continued the discussion on the proposed changes, including responses and questions and issues raised in the public comment and by the City Council. So there were presentations this afternoon by Kurt Nabafeld as well as Sean Angley regarding the proposed ordinance. During the committee, there was lots of discussion. I would encourage members of the public to go back and watch the committee meeting for additional details. There was a motion brought before the council to look at separating out the pieces related to electrification and solar readiness without the efficiency pieces, but that motion failed. And then there was a subsequent motion to pass the ordinance as presented, and that motion passed unanimously 7-0, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made by the chair and a second by Councilmember Hamel. Councilmember Lillquist.
So I was one of the council members who was hoping to set aside, at least for a moment, the energy efficiency components. The electrification components for new commercial and large multifamily buildings are vital, and I didn't want them to slow down. And the solar readiness are easy and valuable changes to the energy code. The bulk of it, though, was this long section with 7 different divisions having to do with energy efficiency on things like energy modeling and thermal conductivity. And that technicality made it difficult for me to understand or know with confidence that the changes that we're contemplating are sort of in alignment with changes already in the works and being proposed to the state energy code. What I didn't want is for Bellingham to not just adopt the same code early, but to adopt something different, and then our community would have to then adjust to the new codes. As staff pointed out, energy codes are revised here in Washington State every 3 years, and they're usually lead the country. And so that the building community is used to a continuous process of education. Fine, I get that. But this time the changes are on us. This time we're the ones who are initiating these changes early in the cycle. And so I just would like to be assured that we, the city of Bellingham, that we now understand that it's on us to educate the building community about the particular changes that we are initiating here in Bellingham ahead of the state curve. And if we can do that, I think we can help smooth the transition, and I would appreciate it very much.
Are there further comments or discussion from council members? Seeing none, I'll call the question. So again, the motion by the chair, seconded by Councilmember Hamel, is to pass the ordinance as presented in the packet. All in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, seeing none, that passes 7-0. And I just wanted to confirm with, I believe Kurt Napfeld's on the call, but this ordinance will come back then at our next meeting on the 7th for third and final. And then I believe the effective date would be 6 months from that date. Actually, I don't know if that's a question for Kurt or for legal, but.
Yeah, that's correct, Councilmember Stone. We will be bringing the ordinance back for third and final at your next meeting. And then it does have an effective date 6 months out from passage.
Okay, thank you for that confirmation. All right. So then we had, after committee of the whole, we had approval of minutes, which again, so we have the reorganization meeting minutes for consideration.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Hamel and a second by Councilmember Lillquist. Any changes or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor will say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Councilmember Anderson, no, okay, so that passes 7-0. Then we have the swearing in ceremony that welcomed in our newly elected and returning council members. Those minutes are for consideration.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Williams and a second by Councilmember Hamel. Any discussion or corrections? Seeing none, all in favor will say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Seeing none, that passes 7-0. And then we have our regular meeting minutes from January 10th.
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Anderson and a second by Councilmember Huffman. Any changes or corrections? I believe there's one correction made to the spelling of Whatcom County Health Department Director Erica Lautenbach. So we have that noted. Any other changes? Okay, seeing none, all in favor will say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Seeing none, that passes 7-0. Old and new business. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. So earlier this week, I had sent council members a letter for consideration for a vote tonight. This is in regards to about over 100 acres of timberland that the DNR is going to be putting up for sale, and it is in the Lake Whatcom watershed. And basically the letter is asking DNR to reconsider or possibly postpone due to a court case in front of the Supreme Court. I understand a county council member will be presenting a different letter, but on the same subject tomorrow. And so I did send the letter to for council. I also sent it to staff, and I hope you forgive me for reading it into record, because not all of the public has had the opportunity to read this letter. The letter is addressed to Honorable Hillary Franz and also multiple members of the commission. So it's, dear board members, at the January 24th, 2022 meeting of the Bellingham City Council, a motion was passed to oppose the Bessie Sorts timber sale by the Board of Natural Resources, BNR, through the Washington Department of Natural Resources, DNR, Bessie Sorts timber sale, SEPA file number 21-100901. This proposed timber sales by the DNR lies within the Lake Whatcom watershed, which is the source of drinking water for over 100,000 people. In the 5 years between 2015 and 2019, multiple agencies had a total expenditure of funds of over $43 million to manage Lake Whatcom. In 2020, the single year expenditure was over $10 million. As detailed in the Lake Whatcom Management Program Annual Progress Report, the City of Bellingham does monitor forestry practices within the Lake Whatcom watershed. While logging on DNR land is not under the control of the City of Bellingham, the City of Bellingham does have a vested interest in the forest health around Lake Whatcom because of the need for clean drinking water. In 1998, Lake Whatcom was placed on the Washington 303D list of polluted water bodies because of not meeting dissolved oxygen standards. Since then, the City of Bellingham has been working to manage Lake Whatcom to ensure drinking water standards are met. The Bessie Sorts timber sale is problematic not only because of the continued decline in Lake Whatcom water quality, but due to the significant age of the Bessie 2 trees. Logging has been shown to have injurious effects on water quality. This impacts everything from in-stream temperatures to dissolved organic carbon, DOC, and nitrogen and phosphorus. The City of Bellingham monitors all of the aspects of Lake Whatcom and has seen increases that significantly contribute to the decline of water quality. Old growth and near old growth timber, as found in Bessie 2 area, are well established in support of water quality and increased biodiversity. Thus, the City of Bellingham is adamantly opposed to the logging of the 100-plus-year-old trees in the Bessie 2 area. The City of Bellingham recognizes that if logging of trees greater than 100 years old occur, then there will never be more old growth timber stands regenerated to increase biodiversity and act as a carbon sink. The City of Bellingham is committed to doing its part to combat climate change. Even logging with best practices has far more environmental impacts than any natural occurrence, such as rainstorms. The City of Bellingham requests that the Bessie 2 unit be removed from the timber sale being considered by BNR and pause be put on the entire Bessie Sorts timber sale until such time as a more thorough analysis of the impact of the Bessie Sorts timber sale can be considered in light of the current DNR evaluation of the proposed moratorium on logging legacy forest. The City of Bellingham would request the DNR to wait for a decision from the Washington Supreme Court from October 2021 hearing of Conservation Northwest et al. Versus Commissioner of Public Lands et al., number 99183-9. This decision might alter the DNR and BNR decision-making in the future. The City of Bellingham and partners will eventually have spent over $100 million of public money in protecting Lake Whatcom watershed. This is incompatible with logging that not only will reduce water quality through the increased nutrient runoff, but also decrease the valuable biodiversity that is necessary for an intact ecosystem. Sincerely, Hannah Stone, Council President, Bellingham City Council. And then to follow are about 9 citations of publication in order to support the facts that I did not write the citation. I didn't read the citation numbers within the contents of the paragraph. We are spending a tremendous amount of money to preserve land in the watershed. And right now, the DNR has kind of made a decision to evaluate or hold off timber cutting for trees that are over 100 years. So basically, this letter is asking them, one, to halt the sale, consider the section of Bessie 2, which has trees that are estimated to be anywhere from 1876 to 1936, which would be a time spread of 146 years to 86 years. There's a good reason to send this letter. I personally would like to see them pause until one of two things. They can do a better analysis of that 50 acres to second, I don't want to say old growth, but depending on how you classify it, but second generational substantial trees. They need to take a look at it. And two, there is a lot of movement about what does it mean for set aside for the public good. DNR has a very narrow scope of selling resources, and a very small part of new school construction comes from that. I think it's probably 1 or 2%. So the Supreme Court will be doing hopefully a decision on what does it mean for the public good. And I hope that they expand their perspective to include recreation, biodiversity, water quality, and not just necessarily selling off resources as part of their mission. So I would appreciate council support of this letter. And I make a motion that council votes to support this letter to be sent on behalf of the council by the council president.
Second.
So motions are made by Councilmember Anderson and a second by Councilmember Lillquist. Councilmember Lillquist.
I do have one concern with this letter, or I have a couple of concerns actually, but one I want to raise at this point. This sale was reviewed by city and county officials as part of the interjurisdictional coordinating committee or some such body like that back in August or summer of last year. And they did send a memo, and the city staff signed on to a memo which sort of gave a passing signal to this sale. And I would like to acknowledge that by inclusion of a paragraph, which would be a new third paragraph between the current second and third paragraph, which would read like this. So I would propose this amendment. The new paragraph would say, previously, this timber sale was reviewed by the Interjurisdictional Committee of Local Governments with Stewardship over Lake Whatcom Watershed. In a letter dated August 2nd, 2020, IJC members concluded the design of the Bessie Sorth proposal meets the intent of the Lake Whatcom Landscape Plan, and no objection was raised at that time. The concerns of the Bellingham City Council in this letter, in contrast, go beyond the question of whether or not the proposed harvest is compliant with the landscape plan. I just feel it's important to not look like we're speaking against that staff review process because this proposal probably is compliant with the landscape plan in most material respects. And so the IJC's letter is probably completely valid. And I think that needs to be in the letter as well, if we're going to send it.
If I need to accept that amendment, I would accept it.
Is that a second?
Second.
Okay, so the amendment was made by Councilmember Lillquist and seconded by Councilmember Anderson. Councilmember Huffman.
So forest land management actually happens to be something I'm fairly interested in. And I spent quite a bit of time digging into this one. I have a lot of notes. Hopefully I can be really concise to to share my perspective on this letter. And I read over all of the emails from environmental groups. I read over DNR's response to those concerns. I talked with somebody at DNR. I talked with people in environmental groups. So I wanted to get a really full perspective on this issue. And I'll address, maybe to try to keep it concise, because there's a lot to unpack in this, but I'll address the water quality, the issue, because I think that's been a question that I've had for a long time. I've been really curious, what does harvesting timber, what kind of effect does it have on the water quality of Lake Whatcom, since that is a use that happens, and we have a lot of uses that happen, but what has the science been saying about harvesting, and particularly phosphorus, of course, which is the concern is sediment from the harvesting practices, potentially increasing phosphorus in the lake. Came across some very interesting stuff. So there was a letter from the Department of Ecology, 2001. Granted, a little dated, but I'll comment on that later. But the conclusion from the Department of Ecology, and I'll just quote this: "The controls you describe for the state lands in the Lake Whatcom watershed are state of the art for reducing the risk of pollution from commercial forest land. Properly managed commercial forest land has been recognized as the most benign active land use for the watershed protection for some time. The possibility of additional controls being imposed as a result of a Lake Whatcom TMDL is remote. Cleanup of Lake Whatcom is more likely to be focused on reducing pollution from non-forestry land uses." So that was the first indicator of like what's the concern here. And since 2001, forest practice rules are more strict than they were 20 years ago. And particularly when we're talking about slope stability assessments that would affect phosphorus. And again, this more recently from 2020, the Lake Whatcom Management Program Progress Report. In 2020, the Lake Whatcom Management Program continued to assess forestry activities to verify that adverse water quality impacts were minimized. It does not list any issues that were discovered during these assessments. So those were two of the kind of concrete indicators of what does tree harvesting, what kind of impact does that have on the quality of Lake Whatcom, water quality of Lake Whatcom? Because I think that's maybe the most applicable to kind of our jurisdiction as a city is all of the concerns about this timber sale is water quality. So that essentially we have much bigger concerns like development. Of course, when we're working hard to prohibit development where we can around the watershed, around the lake. So moving on from that, if the phosphorus impacts aren't terribly significant, I think it kind of just led to, the overall picture. Well, this timber sale has jumped through all the hoops, all of the environmental protections, all of the regulations, all of the increased protections that we have because it is the Lake Whatcom watershed, and the agreements that we have made. It meets all of those requirements, and that's why we are here discussing it at all, or we wouldn't be. It wouldn't be on the table. And I think when it comes, I'll jump to my overall philosophical opinion about harvesting. I feel a little bit hypocritical when, as a city council member, I talk about how it's really important that we're building 1,000 units of housing every year to address our housing crisis. hopefully with lots of wood, that wood sequesters carbon, hopefully for at least 100 years. More would be better, of course. We just passed a single-use plastics ban, and what often is the replacement for single-use plastics, but paper products. And it would be a little hypocritical for me to then turn around and say, but I don't want the source of those products to come from my own backyard. And I realize that this is just one sale, but I also think that kind of just overall view sets a precedent. And instead of looking at this issue as a very local one, and how is the sale affecting our lake? I want to think about, well, if we're saying no here, where are we saying yes to? Where does that harvesting happen if it's not happening here? Is it happening on private land, which is less regulated? There's less public input on private land as well. Are we saying we want it even further out, other states, other countries, where we may not even know what the forest practices are in those other areas? And so this is a tough one for me. I love big trees. I don't want to see them cut down, but I also understand that balance of if we continue to say no and continue to push back on harvesting in our own backyard, what does that mean for the overall picture environmentally? What does that mean for carbon footprints if we're getting our timber imported instead of from here locally? And I don't know the answers to those questions because I'm just a city council member. I don't have a degree in natural sciences. But I think for me, with this one, it comes down to this sale did jump through all the hoops, all of the policies that have been established for protection. And maybe that needs to continually be reviewed. Of course it does, of course. But I think the fight should be more at a policy level with all of those experts in geology, hydrology, biology, ecology at the table, making those assessments and those changes. So hopefully that was concise enough. I could probably go on for another hour about it, but I learned a lot. I will be voting no on this motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Huffman. Similarly, receiving this letter, I had lots of questions and still have some questions, and certainly the points that Councilmember Huffman highlighted. Obviously, this issue dates back with policy decisions, and the background far exceeds my time on council. And I guess if there's the liberty right now to ask from staff if this is an issue that's been, I'm assuming it has been since it's in the watershed, something that we would have monitored closely. If there's additional background or insight that staff could offer, I would welcome that.
Thank you, President Stone. And I've asked Renee LaCroix and Claire Fogelsong. Claire's been involved in this particular issue for many, many, many years. Was associated with the development of the interjurisdictional committee and the landscape plan that DNR has for management of forest practices within the watershed. So Claire and Renee are probably best suited to answer questions that you might have. So Claire, can you chime in and maybe answer Ms. Stone's or others' questions?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to speak to this issue. And Eric's right. I have worked with this issue for several years. I was actually part of the city staff that negotiated the landscape plan back in the day, and I have hired a consultant all these years to represent the city on the IJC, and he's a forest management graduate from UW, and he's got an MS in forest hydrology, and he works with the other members of the IJC to bring a variety of skill sets to the review of these cuts. And like Councilman Huffman said, they did review this cut, this DNR cut. They did have a couple of suggestions. One of them was that they asked DNR not to use phosphorus fertilizer when they're bringing the forest back, and DNR agreed to that. Councilman Huffman was also right in her observation that DNR has an obligation to cut a certain amount of timber every year. And that obligation is to the state school system. And if that cut isn't made here locally, it'll be made someplace in the state. And if the state doesn't have enough timber, it will, she said, export or import, excuse me, from other countries. And we know that forest practices in other countries are wanting. So I was really appreciative of the perspective that you just heard from her. I would add that there are other aspects of this sale that, in addition to no phosphorus being applied to the forest, the buffers are quite large. Not only do we have the landscape plan buffers, but we also have DNR is using a cut called, or a methodology called variable retention harvest. And that also requires buffers, and it leaves a certain amount of trees per acre. So we have the riparian areas are protected, and we have trees per acre left. So there's plenty to, I think, recommend that this is as good as it gets as far as harvesting goes. It's well known that logging can produce negative impacts, but you can't, I don't think we should paint every logging practice with, or every logging show with the same expectations. Some are a lot better than others. And as was pointed out, some private harvest on private property has a lot more impact than the impacts that we see from DNR properties. I could go into more detail with some of the specific issues, but I think that pretty much covers, and I'm certainly willing to answer questions.
Other council members have any specific questions for Claire Fogelson or Renee LaCroix or Director Johnston, now that we have the whole? I guess one of my follow-up questions, I know that the amendment which is currently on the table from Councilmember Lillquist referenced the letter sent in August. I believe Councilmember Lillquist, you said that was August of 2020. The date I wrote down was August 2nd, 2020. But I don't know, Claire, if
you're correct, 2021.
It's 2021, okay.
If I might, the review was done in, I believe, May or June. The IJC submitted some comments to DNR. There was some acreage misrepresentations, and so they submitted the final comments in August, as Councilman Lillquist pointed out. I would point out also, I guess, that there is some there is a court case, I understand, and there are some internal DNR processes underway to take a look at old growth forests and how they're managing those. But this forest, this area doesn't qualify as an old growth forest. It is old. I mean, and it's old to me. It's 100 years old or so, but it's not. It doesn't age from 1887. That figure was from an estimate that DNR keeps on all their forest land, and then they go out and do specific analysis on each piece of property, and that further analysis on the ground, coring the old trees to see how old they are, showed that the trees date from about 1910 or so. So they are old, but they don't qualify for the additional protection that DNR is considering as they reconsider their old growth forest stands and how they manage those.
Thank you, Claire. I guess the concerns that I have also reflect a little bit on what Councilmember Huffman was sharing as far as write a letter as the council to speak on an issue. To me, as a council member, I take seriously in the respect that I don't want our position or taking the steps to write a letter to become something that we do all the time about a real issue. And I feel like then, right, the weight of that voice is lessened in some way. And so for that reason, I mean, I appreciate the amendment presented by Councilmember Lillquist to acknowledge the correspondence sent by staff or the action that was, previously taken. But for that reason and the policy reasons outlined and hearing that, right, everything's been followed, I struggle with, right, the justification to take that position on this particular issue, to send a letter as council, but would welcome the opportunity to hear from other council members. If there is no further discussion, we first have an amendment on the table. The amendment is from Councilmember Lillquist, seconded by Councilmember Anderson, which is to add a paragraph, which would appear between the second and third paragraph of the letter that Councilmember Anderson read into the record. And that addition, I can't quote all that Councilmember Lillquist read, but would reference that IGC letter, or the letter that was sent to IGC August 2nd, 2021. So with respect to that amendment, I will call the question. All in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
No. Any abstentions? Okay, so I may have to call the vote. I heard the no. I'm backing into this. I heard the no's myself, Councilmember Huffman, Councilmember Hamel. And I heard ayes from Councilmember Anderson and Lillquist, but Councilmember Martins and Councilmember Williams.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so the amendment passes 4-3 with 0 abstentions. So that brings us to the original motion, which was from Councilmember Anderson, requesting that the council, or myself as council president, that the council sign on to this letter and send it to the designated recipients. And that would be with the amendment, which passed 4-3. Discussion on the existing motion. Seeing none. All in favor will say aye.
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 Okay, so I see those as Councilmember Anderson, Lillquist, Martins. Are there any other ayes? Okay. Those opposed? No?
Aye.
No.
No.
And I have the no's as Councilmember Huffman, Hamel, Williams, and Stone. And that accounts for 7, so no abstentions. And so then that motion would fail. Are there other items for old or new business? No other items for old or new business. Okay. If not, one item I will bring forward. In the future, we'd received a memo as the council from City Attorney Mariner regarding the reorganization meeting follow-up that outlined a few items. I just wanted to highlight that we will be bringing an item forward before council to consider the ranked choice voting or use by council to fill vacancies in the future. So that item will be coming forward. And then I also just wanted to address the proposed change to add profanity to the list of it was to add a prohibition on profanity at city council meetings. And it was adding to our procedures under section 8A, exhibit A, included with disorderly speech or action, name calling or personal attacks, obscene or indecent remarks, profanity, and derogatory comments on personalities, that those things would be precluded from inclusion, right, during public comment or public hearings, or public engagement with council. But I wanted to highlight that under the protections of the First Amendment with respect to freedom of speech and the public comment periods, that would not be an outright prohibition in that someone couldn't be muted and removed from a meeting immediately, that there is outlined in the procedure sort of this progression of warnings, right? A warning up front if it's violated, a second warning, and then potentially a third request that they stop talking and then being removed. And so just wanting to acknowledge that under those protections, sort of as you witnessed during the public comment periods at the beginning of 2021, I believe that would have been, but following basically that protocol after discussions with, at that time, City Attorney Peter Raffato regarding those protections and the inability to just sort of have an outright ban. And so just wanting to acknowledge that those protections are in place and what would be required in actual procedures in carrying out that particular change. And so more to come on that. With the executive session report. This afternoon, we had an executive session. We had 2 items before us. The first was a potential property acquisition. Staff provided information on a potential property acquisition. This was for information and discussion only, and there was no action taken. The second item was a labor relations item regarding bargaining strategy, where staff provided information on a labor relations matter. This too was for information and discussion only, and there was no action taken. Now we have consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Hamel and a second by Councilmember Lillquist. Any discussion? No, okay. Seeing none, all in favor will say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, seeing none, that passes 7-0. And we have no final consideration of ordinances this evening, but we will at our next meeting. So if there is there any further business before the council at this time? Okay. Seeing none, with that, we will adjourn, and just wanted to highlight that our next meeting will be Monday, February 7th, 2022. Again, that will be Monday, February 7th. And at that time, there will also be a public hearing, as mentioned earlier, to consider those Bellingham Municipal Code changes to Title 20 and 21, revising the docket process for proposals, seeking to amend the Bellingham Comprehensive Plan. So again, sign up for the public hearing. Can be done in advance online, or you can also sign up on the day of the public hearing during the council meeting. So there's no further business before the council at this time. We are adjourned. Y'all have a good evening.